welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna be doing another storytelling. This is actually Hua and Dua Ntxoo part 2. I know I kind of got a little 2 weeks away from it, and I apologize from that. I finally finished the story, and so I hope that y'all enjoy it, and let's get on with what happens next for Hua and Dua Ntxoo, right? The new year came with an unpleasant surprise. A line of suitors awaited to get the chance to court Dua Ntxoo, but she had no interest in such a trivial matter. Instead, she shooed all of them away in an instant. "You arrogant girl, how could you drive them away from your own home?" shouted Grandma angrily. "It's exactly because this is my house. I don't need strangers trying to woo me. If I wanted to marry, I would have picked a suitor by now," replied Dua Ntxoo fiercely. "Don't tell me that the rumors are true," replied Grandpa. Dua Ntxoo held in her breath as she turned to look at Hua, who quickly motioned her to say no. Somewhat disappointed by Hua's quick answer, she let out a sigh of frustration. "Who knows? The men I've met in my life are either assholes, father or Hua," replied Dua Ntxoo. "Hey, we're not assholes," replied Ching in objection. Dua Ntxoo glared at her brothers as they quickly looked away. "You're the heir to the Fang family, and as the heir, you need to marry and have a family," said Grandma. "I can be heir and don't have to be rooted in marriage yet. Why do you think there are old bachelors and bachelorettes?" said Dua Ntxoo. "Don't tell me you want to remain single for a while. Marriage is best at your age," replied Mother. "Being heir is already tiring enough. I work with Father 24/7. If I marry, nothing will change. So I will just focus on my job," replied Dua Ntxoo. "Are you really going to argue with us?" asked Grandpa impatiently. "Just give me a year to think about marriage," replied Dua Ntxoo. Hua was collecting water by the stream with Dua Ntxoo as people walked past them with looks of prejudice. "So how are you going to find a partner in a year? If your grandparents don't approve of that person, then you're back to square one," replied Hua. "I only said that to them so they'll stop pestering me," replied Dua Ntxoo truthfully. "So you lied," said Hua. Dua Ntxoo nodded her head with no guilt. "You know, that's not going to end well," replied Hua. "I didn't know what to say. I wish I was a kid again," pouted Dua Ntxoo. Hua chuckled and splashed water at Dua Ntxoo. In turn, she did back as well. Their playful side came out and started a water fight as the locals watched in embarrassment for their flirting. Blong and Ching watched from afar. "So what are you going to do?" asked Ching. "Isn't it obvious? Send that orphan boy to watch our cattle farm," said Blong. "But what if Father," replied Ching worriedly. "Father's not coming home for a while. A little distance should do them some good," smiled Blong. The next day, Dua Ntxoo went out looking for Hua, but could not find him. She asked the workers around the house where he went, but none of them knew his whereabouts. She then confronted Ching, who was trying hard to play pretend. "Where is he?" asked Dua Ntxoo, crossing her arms. "Who?" asked Ching confusedly. Dua Ntxoo smirked and placed her hand on Ching's shoulder. "How about a duel? If I win, I get to drag you around town." "Literally," replied Dua Ntxoo impatiently. Ching knew well of his capabilities, and he wasn't going to win this match. "And the alternative," smiled Ching nervously. "You tell me where Hua is," replied Dua Ntxoo with a smile. Ching told her where Hua was, and without hesitation, Dua Ntxoo rode her horse to the family's cattle farm. It was a day's travel, but she was able to make it before nightfall, and when she got there, she saw Hua blindly enjoying the peaceful outdoors. "Are you really going to do everything my brothers say?" asked Dua Ntxoo angrily. "Blong told me that Mr. Hu needed help, and he wasn't wrong," replied Hua. "Since it's getting late, let's sleep here for one night, and then tomorrow, let's return back to town," replied Dua Ntxoo. Hua became very quiet before speaking his mind. "Actually, I think I'm gonna stay here," replied Hua. Dua Ntxoo was surprised to hear this. "I don't understand," replied Dua Ntxoo. "I like it here," replied Hua. "You've only been here for not even a day," said Dua Ntxoo confusedly. "I know, but I like it here," said Hua with a smile. "You're kidding," replied Dua Ntxoo in disbelief. Hua led Dua Ntxoo to a small mountain cliff where the moon and stars could be seen. "Maybe it's because I don't have a family, but I've always dreamed of having my own plot of land, tending my own crops and raising animals. And if I'm lucky, have a partner to share a peaceful life with, said Duho in happiness. That's all you want? asked Donzong. Duho laughed. It's already too much to ask for, replied Duho. Donzong has never really thought about her future. In fact, when Duho spoke about his future desire, it made her want to be a part of his future. Am I a part of your future? asked Donzong. Duho's smile began to fade as he became quiet and distant. It's impossible because we are two different people, walking on very different paths, replied Duho sadly. Donzong felt hurt by his words. What are you trying to tell me? asked Donzong angrily. Duho held his breath, afraid to say the things he'll say next. Ever since I came into the Feng family, I continue to suffer, if not by your family, then by outsiders. Your actions and words are what causes me to suffer since you got close to me. I have had enough of bearing your responsibility. You and I live in different worlds, and I think it's time for us to stop living in fantasy. So I'm asking you, please, let me live. Let me breathe. I want to be here, because it's where I won't be tortured by your family or be ridiculed by others, begged Duho, as tears began to roll down his face. Donzong couldn't be mad at Duho. If anything, she felt guilty, felt responsible for his torture all these years. Donzong then placed her hand on top of his and dried his tears. Okay, stay, because I want you to have happiness as well, replied Donzong hurtfully. Donzong was too ashamed to stay the night, knowing how Duho felt about her, and so she returned home, living like a dead person. A year passed by without any word or letters. Donzong had adjusted her life back to normalcy, but her heart has become tainted. She only works and nothing else until news of a potential bachelor wanting to marry her came into the light. Donzong, Jimo has come to ask for your hand in marriage. What will you say? Asked father gently. Donzong, who has lost her fire, slowly looked at her father, who was concerned about her. Can I not marry him, father? Asked Donzong desperately. All the girls your age has already married and have their firstborn, so what is stopping you from getting married? Asked mother angrily. I want to marry someone that I love, replied Donzong. Ha! That's impossible. Love comes later in a marriage, laughed mother. I know that father and mother married because they had to, but if you had a chance to fall in love with someone, would you still marry each other? Asked Donzong. Of course I'd marry your father, replied mother coldly. Donzong's father gently patted her head. Of course I would marry the person I love, said father proudly. Donzong was a bit shocked to hear her father's response and looked up to him with a smile that she had long put on. So tell me, who is the person that has stolen my daughter's heart? Asked father curiously. Donzong was hesitant to speak his name. Duhua, replied Donzong sadly. Her family was in shock. They exchanged looks of concern as her father slightly pushed her away from him. You're joking, right? Laughed Ching. Donzong knew it was worth a shot and got up from her seat, excusing herself from her family. She took a stroll around Old Memory Lane, the familiar forest that she and Duhua would take to collect herbs, the stream that they would gather water together, and even the New Year where they attend every year. Donzong felt so soulless that every time she breathed, her heart ached more and more. And sometimes, when her heart ached so badly, she would hide and cry, covering her mouth from being heard. It was suffocating to her. Then one day, Donzong woke up to noises outside her room, to see that her parents had prepared an engagement ceremony without her approval. It seems that now you and I would truly be wed, smiled Chimo. Donzong was disgusted by her family's behavior, that she destroyed the engagement ceremony. Enraged by her selfishness, her family locked her up in her room until her wedding day. For days, Donzong refused to eat and drink, living in darkness and begging her father to let her out. I thought you were different from Mom and my brothers, cried Donzong, who trusted her father's judgment. Donzong's father sat outside her room with shame and guilt. You are my only daughter. You have lived a privileged life. You do not know what it is like to work hard until your body becomes numb to pain. I don't want you to marry a person like Duhua, who has no assets and has to work constantly to survive. If you marry him, you'll live a life of suffering, said father. If he marries into the family, you wouldn't have to worry about me suffering, cried Donzong. I know, but even if I approve, your grandparents would never. If they have heard you say you love Duho, your grandparents would have done anything to get rid of him. Do you really want that? Asked father sadly. If I truly love him, I should let him go. Is that what you're saying? Asked Donzong. You're right, replied father sadly. Donzong began to bawl, heartbroken by her unrequited love. That evening, as everyone fell asleep, an intruder entered into Donzong's room. She did not know who it was, but she did not care. There's jewelries in the chest and expensive silks in the drawers, said Donzong. The intruder was startled by her laid-back attitude. Why are you letting me take things? Asked the intruder confusedly. My family is making me marry an evil person tomorrow. It'd be funny to see him freak when all my assets has been taken, smiled Donzong. The intruder did not budge from their place. Sorry, it's a bit much to take in. You can continue to do whatever it is you are here for, replied Donzong, and laid back in bed. I came here to see a friend since I heard it was her wedding day tomorrow. But after hearing that, perhaps it's good that I broke into your room, replied the familiar voice. Donzong slowly turned around to see Duho taking off his mask and smiling at her. Donzong began to think that she must be hallucinating. How bad must I miss you to see you so clearly, laughed Donzong in disbelief. Duho came over to her bedside and hugged her, making it all surreal. I'm real. I'm really real, whispered Duho gently. Donzong's tears began to roll down her face. After a year and a half, she finally got to see her friend again. When she was done crying, she continued to hold on to Duho, afraid that if she released him, he'll disappear. Jimoa does not deserve my best friend, not even one bit. So what should we do? Asked Duho. What can we do? I'm following the path that you so desperately wanted me to walk, said Donzong coldly. I see that you still remember those bitter words, said Duho shamefully. Donzong then let go of Duho. A matter like tomorrow is nothing new. My family has always been like this, replied Donzong. Still, there's a fine line where they can take things to the extreme, replied Duho angrily. Donzong smiled, a bit happy to see Duho taking her side once again. Thank you for always being on my side. How did I ever survive without you? Asked Donzong. Should we run away? Asked Duho sternly. Donzong was surprised to hear those words, and then shook her head. Don't do anything foolish, you're only gonna get yourself hurt, replied Donzong angrily. I'm serious. Let's run away, said Duho desperately, as he tightly held onto Donzong's hands. As much as she wanted to say no, her heart foolishly followed his lead. I will never leave you to suffer alone again. I can promise you that, said Duho. Donzong packed her belongings, and the two friends escaped in the night. They ran as far as their feet could take them. They ran town to town until they felt like no one knew who they were. Let's head east. I heard that the Middle Land consists of mostly tribes and nomads, said Duho. Okay, I like the sound of that, replied Donzong. Then get plenty of rest. We have a long journey ahead of us, said Duho, having Donzong lean on his chest as they fell into a deep sleep. They journeyed to the Middle Land and lived their life with a small tribe near the hills and valleys. The tribe was filled with kind people who was always willing to help. They got married and lived a hard, well-earned life among the small tribes. Donzong and Duho lived a happy marriage life for a little over a year, with Donzong being 5 months pregnant with her firstborn. One day, news that a traveling merchant was traveling around the Middle Land in search for high-quality fabrics, materials, or handmade accessories. Like any tribe that is eager to trade and sell their products, Donzong also wanted to gain a little bit of profit for their soon-to-be family. Duho had gone out on a hunting trip with a few other hunters. That day, Donzong waited with the others for the merchants to come by, and when they did, they were dressed in northern clothes, their faces covered in a thin white cloth for protection of the sun's heat. When it was Donzong's turn, she handed them an old family inheritance. The merchant was quick to recognize the crest of the family name and looked up. He then pulled down his head mask to reveal himself as Jimoa. Donzong? Shouted Jimoa in disbelief. Donzong's face turned pale as she slowly backed away from him and tried to run, but he grabbed a hold of her and put her in the carriage with him and rode off with her. "Let me go!" shouted Donzong. "Do you realize how much I lost because of you? After you left, my family fell into ruins. We went from being rich to being simple merchants. My parents died from knowing we'd fallen into our deepest, and my life became a joke. If it weren't for a little runaway show, I would still be living a luxurious life," shouted Chimo angrily. "It's called karma," shouted Donzong angrily. "Your folks are still searching for you. They have an incredible reward waiting for whoever can bring you back," smiled Chimo. Once again, Donzong has become entrapped by her destiny. No matter how much she runs from her fate, she always ends up at home, where everything started. Donzong was taken inside her family's home that she hasn't walked in for a year and a half now. Her grandparents, parents, and brothers are all still the same. "Where was she?" asked Grandpa sternly. "She was living among some hill people," said Chimo with a grin. "What proof do you have that she is my daughter?" asked Father. Chimo threw the family heirloom over at Blanc, who catched it and realized the family's crest. "It's her," replied Blanc. Donzong had nothing to say to her family. "I'm surprised to see how much the clothes can change a person's appearance, but I'm not as shocked as the fact that you're pregnant," said Mother. "What's wrong with me being pregnant?" asked Donzong angrily. "It doesn't fit you. You used to preach about not getting married and whatnot," replied Ching. "At that time, I had no intention of marrying," said Donzong sternly. "So, who's our so-called brother-in-law?" asked Blanc. "Donzong!" shouted Du Hua as he ran into their home uninvited. Donzong was surprised to see Du Hua standing behind her. "What are you doing here?" asked Donzong desperately. "I came to get you. The villagers told me what happened," said Du Hua out of breath. "Why am I not surprised? Of course Du Hua took you," replied Chimo. "He didn't take me. I willingly went with him," replied Donzong angrily. Despite her desperate plea to let them go, Du Hua was beaten until he couldn't move. Donzong begged her family to stop until their father intervened. "Now that he's half dead, I never want to see you again," replied Father angrily. "Dad," objected Blanc. "Go! Never step foot in this town again," shouted Father sternly. Donzong glared at her family and helped Du Hua on his feet. "Even if you tell me not to, I would never come back," said Donzong. They then returned to the Middle Land and lived a quiet life. As 2 years passed by, they were blessed with another newborn. Their oldest child, Yao, and their newborn, Jai Lia. After giving birth, Donzong had lost a lot of blood and was not feeling well. Du Hua decided to go find medicine in the forest and left his spouse and children behind. He ventured into the hills that he was familiar with, but there was no postpartum herbs. He decided to walk further into the woods and came upon a small cave with many herbs he was familiar with. He quickly picked the herbs and placed them in his basket, but his quick-wittedness was soon interrupted when he heard a weak cry of help. Du Hua slowly followed the voice deeper into the cave and saw a man chained to the wall. "Finally, a savior," smiled the man on the wall. Du Hua cautiously approached the man and asked him, "Who are you?" The man on the wall told Du Hua that he was an ordinary man who fell in love, but the villagers killed his lover, and the man in return avenged his lover. The villagers came together to magically chain the man in this cave to repent his sins. "Do you think it was wrong for me to kill the people who killed my lover?" asked the man on the wall. "Killing is wrong no matter what," said Du Hua. The man on the wall laughed and said, "You're so the kind-hearted person. That is exactly why people take advantage of you." "Do you want to know your future?" asked the man on the wall. "No," replied Du Hua, and was ready to leave. The man on the wall sighed in disappointment and smirked. "All you ever wanted was happiness, but you won't be able to have it, and the people you love will suffer because of your misfortune," said the man on the wall. "What are you trying to say?" asked Du Hua impatiently. "You were born to live with misfortunes, and that will be the downfall of your family. The happiness you desire so much for your family will be covered with constant darkness," replied the man on the wall. "How do I know you're not lying?" asked Du Hua. "A god does not lie," said the man on the wall. "A god? Now you're taking it too far," laughed Du Hua. "Your wife must be exhausted by now. She had just given birth to a baby girl. But unfortunately, by the time you return, she'd have lost a lot of blood," said the man on the wall. "What do you want from me?" asked Du Hua. "Release me from my prison. Then I'll make sure she lives," said the man on the wall. I don't trust you, replied Du Hua sternly. I don't expect you to, but are you really going to just let me stay here? I'll die, said the man on the wall. A god does not die, replied Du Hua. But a god who has long lived on earth can. Now, what will it be? A life for a life, begged the man. Although Du Hua was hesitant to believe, a part of his good nature could not turn a blind eye. Du Hua broke the chains off with his axe as the man on the wall fell to the ground. Weak, but can still stand, the man laughed with more evil than good in his voice, and then he turned to look at Du Hua. With a flick of his finger, the man forced Du Hua to his knees as the man came and examined Du Hua. Your physique is nothing exquisite, and your birthmark is definitely demeaning. But I think everything will work out just fine, smiled the man happily. What are you going to do? Asked Du Hua angrily. This body I'm in no longer interests me. Instead, I'm interested to see the kind of misfortune you'll bring to your family if you become a conduit, said the man cheerfully. I have no intention of giving myself to you, said Du Hua. How about we make a deal? If you say yes to me, I'll let your wife live. After all, you have 2 beautiful children who will become orphans if she dies, smiled the man. Du Hua fell into a predicament, but what worried him the most was his wife and children. Then, promise me this. You have to save my wife, begged Du Hua. The man smiled with an evil grin from ear to ear and nodded his head. With a snap of his finger, Donzong's pain went away. In fact, her strength from giving birth had all returned. Du Hua had unwillingly given himself for the sake of his family. The man had possessed Du Hua's body and disappeared, as Du Hua's soul was left to wander. Having a bad feeling, Donzong quickly made haste into the forest with her children in her arms. She thought that she would see Du Hua picking herbs, but she could not find him. She wandered the forest aimlessly, but found him to be nowhere. She called out his name dozens of times, but he did not respond. She sat down by a 100-year-old tree, exhausted and angry. Du Hua, where are you? Whispered Donzong tiredly, as she and the children dozed off into a deep sleep. Du Hua's spirit sat next to them. He tried to touch them, but his sense of touch had become hollow and nothing. Tears began to roll down his face, heartbroken to know that the happiness he wished he could have had has been cut short by his ill fate. And for the first time, he thought to himself, why was I born with such a cruel life? Du Hua then turned to look at Donzong and kissed her forehead. I'm so sorry for leaving your side. I'm sorry that you had fallen in love with a misfortune like me. I made you suffer along with me when you could have lived such a better life. I'll wait for you so we can go to heaven together and beg the gods to have mercy on us. And maybe in our next life, we'll see each other. And maybe then, I'll have better luck in choosing a good life so that you won't suffer like in this lifetime, cried Du Hua. Donzong then opened her eyes as Du Hua looked into her eyes. He let out a sigh of relief and smiled. Donzong, he whispered, but she did not reply. Instead, she got up and walked away from his side. He followed her into town where she begged the villagers to help look for Du Hua. They looked for 3 days and nights, but they could not find him. As the days turned to weeks, the villagers had given up on the search. They told Donzong to give up and focus on raising her children, who needed their mother. But Donzong was not willing to give up. Every day when she can find time, she would aimlessly walk into the forest and search for Du Hua. It had become an obsession that she could not let go, for she had many unanswered questions to his disappearance. Du Hua, where did you go? Why did you leave us? Cried Donzong desperately. Du Hua stood behind her and could only cry in forgiveness. I'm sorry, Donzong. Please don't search for me. No matter how much you want to find me, my body is long gone. Only my spirit is here, cried Du Hua. Donzong returned home and sat in front of their house, watching the sunset with shades of yellow and orange. Their children were happily playing with each other, as Du Hua came and held Donzong in his arms. You don't have to search for me anymore, for I will always be here with you, said Du Hua with a smile. And as the years went by, Du Hua watched his children grow up, fall in love, and start a life. And every day, like a routine that has become prevalent in her life, Donzong would wander into the forest to reminisce the beautiful memories she had left of Duhua. Her heart was filled with open wounds, but the memories kept her alive and whole, while Duhua knowingly follows her wherever she goes, despite her being unaware of his presence. The end. So that was the end of my two-part series for Donzong and Duhua. This story is kind of a short story of a long story that I've been writing, and so I've kind of used these two, their story, and kind of put it into a short story for y'all to listen to. And I hope that y'all enjoyed it. So then that's it for today. Thank you for watching and have a great day, y'all. Bye!